Now you should have done the AutoCAD facilities management areas, and what we're doing now is we're moving on to the next level. We're going to start managing our space, as in the name of the course, space management. And what we're going to look at is developing the areas we created in the previous course and actually making them into spaces and adding more information to the facilities management drawing. Where there will be areas, there will actually be values of areas such as meters squared, but there'll also be all of the space information, the room use information, and so on and so forth. And it is a slightly different step up from the areas course, and you'll see that as we work through the course. So welcome now to AutoCAD Facilities Management Space Management. In this AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course, we will be using the latest version of AutoCAD, which is AutoCAD 2017. We'll be using the native file format, the DWG file format, and what you should also know before you start this course is really, preferentially, you should have done the AutoCAD Facilities Management 101 course, the areas course, so that you're aware of how the areas are created in an AutoCAD Facilities Management drawing. What you might also need to be aware of is what we often do in facilities management is reference in a structural plan. So you'll notice I'm in the 00 ground FM intro drawing. Well, that's the FM drawing. If I come in here like so and click on this little arrow here just to show me what external references I've got loaded, you can see that we've got a 00 ground GA intro drawing there. Now that will be renamed as we go through this particular space management course, and you'll see how you can rename the reference file in order to improve things like layer management. So these file references will be brought in pretty much in every single chapter in this course. So you'll get used to that and we'll take you through it. But ideally what you should know is that we're running with AutoCAD 2017 and that preferentially you should have done the AutoCAD Facilities Management 101 course first. As you work through the videos of this AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course, you will be prompted to download certain DWG files from the lynda.com exercise files. So you can see at the moment that we've got a drawing with a name at the top of the screen that is 00 ground FM intro.dwg. That's the sort of file name that you will be prompted to download from your lynda.com exercise files. And don't worry, I will tell you when to download, when to attach a file, and when to name a file, and so on, should it be needed throughout the videos in the course. So let's get down to it now. Let's get the AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course on the road. And when you're using the exercise files, just listen out for me prompting which files to download, and more importantly, which file names to download and use to follow along with the videos. So we're starting our AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course, and we're in the first chapter and we're going to be looking at an introduction to FM Facilities Management. Now you should have already done the AutoCAD Facilities Management 101 areas course. So I'm going to talk about more what is FM and more importantly what is space management. Now space management is when you're managing your spaces. So these spaces are named and have an allocated use. So what we're looking at now is the use of the space that we've already generated the areas for. Now if you've done the Facilities Management 101 course, you will recognize the drawing in front of you. It's the 00 ground FM intro.dwg file. It's the same building that we used in the 101 course. It's an insurance company building and they've bought an old residential property for their insurance company headquarters. And what we're doing is we are facilities managing that particular building. So I'm in the model tab at the moment, and if I zoom in here, you can see there's the reception area, and as you can see it's got the area, the polyline, it's also got the area value and the name of that particular area. So we need to manage that particular space. Now what we're going to do as we go through this course and look at FM with a space management slant is we're going to look at actually making sure that every single room in this particular ground floor plan is allocated an area. More importantly though, it has a space, and that space can be managed so that we can calculate the total space of all of the rooms and areas, all of the spaces in essence, on this particular ground floor. So I'll just double click on the wheel there to zoom extents again. So that's basically what is FM in a nutshell when we're talking about space management. So let's move forward now and start looking at how we can apply our facilities management drawing to the process of space management and beyond. So how do we utilize our AutoCAD drawings for space management? Well, if you've already done the AutoCAD Facilities Management 101 Areas course, you will have understood that what we do is we reference in a structural plan drawing and then start placing our area polylines on top of that. So the structural plan drawing becomes an XREF called FP, Facilities Plan. Now I've already done that in this particular drawing, so you can see that we're in 00 ground FM underscore intro.dwg. The FM means it's our facilities management drawing. So if I jump into the Insert tab quickly and go to the Reference panel and just click here, it brings up the External References palette. And if I hover over that FP, my facilities plan, you can see that the actual name of the DWG there in the listing is 00 ground GA underscore intro.dwg. Now I've renamed that as FP using the rename command, and we will cover that later. So I'll just close the references palette. The reason we do it is we go to the Home tab here, and if I look at the layers now and go to Layer Properties, all of my facilities plan layers are there. They're grayed out, but they've just got FP, then a little line, and then the name of the layer. So it's a layer management thing. But how do we use all of that information to generate our spaces and make more spaces? Well, what we did in the Areas course, the 101 course, was you'll remember that we did a gross internal area polyline and a gross external area polyline. So if I just zoom in a bit, and just on this corner here, you can see, look, there's the gross internal area polyline. Now, all of our room areas should be included into that gross internal area. That's what space management's all about, making sure that you're using all of the gross internal area of the floor of the building. In this particular case, this particular building and the drawing of this particular floor. Now, space management also allows you to name the areas, which we've done already, but we need to start specifying the use of the area and, for example, the department that controls or owns the area or has a controlling interest in that area. And you'll see as we go through, we'll start adding more and more information to these area polylines that we developed in the 101 course. And as we work through, you'll see that the entire floor area will be polylined. And the whole idea of all of those polylines is they should add up to a figure that is close to, but not exactly, the gross internal area. You will never ever be able to use all of your gross internal area because you'll have things like bathrooms, cupboards, fireplaces, doorways, and so on. So what we're going to do with the space management is make sure that we manage all of the space that we use effectively. So we're staying in our 00 ground FM intro drawing, and as you can see, we're in the Model tab, and I've zoomed to the extent of the drawing, and we're going to look at how we manage our spaces when we're working with space management in AutoCAD. In the previous course, we polylined the areas and gave them some text descriptions and used the Insert Fields command to insert the actual physical areas. So let's zoom in on the reception area here. And you can see that text there. So there's one piece of text there that says reception area, and there's another piece of text, and it's all multi-line text, and it's actually showing me that that's 24.2 meters squared. Now, it may be that I want to extract different types of data from the drawing. Now, the way that I can extract data from the drawing is I can actually utilize a thing called attributes. Now, those attributes are normally assigned with something like an AutoCAD block that has geometry. Now, there's nothing to stop you creating an AutoCAD block made from text. Now, that might sound a bit strange, but it works. So let's have a look at how it works. Now, I'm just going to go into this in a very simple fashion to show you the process overview, and then as we work through the course, you'll see how we use those attributes to create the blocks even further. So what I'm going to do is go up to the Insert tab on the ribbon, Define Attributes, like so. And my tag is going to be Room Use. Remember, no spaces in tags in AutoCAD, and the prompt will also be room use with a question mark, and then the default, surprise, surprise, room use as well. Now, obviously, that default will change depending on when you edit the attribute. Now, justification is to the left. It's using the room names model text style, and I've got a text height of 200. That's fine. I'm not too worried about this because I'm just showing you how it works right now. So I click on OK, and there's my tag there. So I bring that in. There's my attribute tag right there, and click, like so. Now, I'm not going to block this text here. I'm just going to block this here. So if I now go to create block, like so, and bring in the block definition dialog box like this, remember, I can use this over and over again because it's a block. So my block definition in this case would be also room use, like that. I'll pick a point, and that point on there, I would probably use the insert snap. So if I shift and right click, I want this one here, insert, and there's the insert snap there on the corner. I'm going to select the objects. It's just going to be that one there, like that, and right click or enter to confirm. And I'm going to convert that to a block straight away, like so. Now, it could be annotative if you wanted to use different scale viewports, and obviously if you are going to scale it uniformly, also allow exploding, because then you might want to create a different type of block in inverted commas. Now, these aren't physical geometry blocks. These are room description blocks and space management blocks where we're adding data to the drawing to allow us to work with the space management. So when I click on OK, it now prompts me room use. So I can now say reception. So I'll put that into my edit attributes dialog box like that, click on OK. And now I've actually got a block there. If I hover over that, it's a block reference. Yes, it's on layer 0 just for now, but can you see how that works? So now I can insert another block. So if I go insert block now, and I go to room use here, I can bring that in over here. So there's my room use block there. If I click there now, I can say room use, so that's main office. In fact, it would just be office, probably, the description. So if I do that and OK that now, I've now got another one in there with a different value. So I've got reception room use, office room use. Now this data, again, is X data, and it can be extracted from the space management drawing and put onto tables and exported out to Excel spreadsheets, very similar to the way that we work with the areas course. We're starting a new chapter now, just like we did in the AutoCAD Facilities Management 101 Areas course. We're going to look at setting up a facilities drawing. Now, I've included this chapter in all 3 of the facilities management series purely because you might pick up just one of the series and follow it. So you need to know how to set up a facilities drawing correctly. So in this chapter, we're going to be using the 00ground_fm_fin.dwg file. Now, that particular file will be included in your lynda.com exercise files, but it will be the finished article, the completed article. The drawing that you need to use to follow along with the videos is just called 00ground_fm.dwg. So make sure you use the right drawings. So I'm in the fin version of the drawing. You will just be using 00ground_fm.dwg. So you'll notice when we go into the FM drawing, it's actually empty. And the first thing we need to do is set up our proprietary title block. Now the good thing is I've already included a title block in the drawing for you. And if you go down here to the 00ground tab, which again I've already set up for you there, I've renamed the layout 1 tab to 00ground and deleted the layout 2 tab. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our page size, which is going to be an ISO A1 sheet. So I come down here, right click on 00ground and go to Page Setup Manager, like so. Now, you'll notice there's no page setup set up for this particular tab. You can tell because it's just got the asterisks around it, which is the layout 00ground there. So we click on New, and the new page setup is going to be called ISO A1, and then Landscape for the orientation, and then a dash again, and then PDF. We're going to plot to PDF if we do plot. So I click on OK, and I set it up there. So DWG to PDF, that was already in there. If it isn't, just click on the flyout and select it. Paper size, again, great big long list. So just scroll up and you'll see the ISOs there. We want ISO A1 841 by 594. We're going to plot to extents. Now you'll notice there's no extents at the moment because there's nothing in the drawing to go to the extents of. So what we've got there is layout right now. That's no problem. And we've got ACAD CTB there as well. Now the scale will be 1:1 because our proprietary title block is also the same size, the 841 by 594 millimeters. So I'll just click on OK now. And you can see there's our ISO A1 landscape PDF. Highlight it, make it blue, double click on it, and that will apply it to your 00 ground layout tab. So then click on close like so. Now you'll notice everything gets a lot bigger. Just double click on the wheel to zoom extents. You've now got an A1 sheet, 841 by 594 millimeters. We now need to insert the proprietary title block. So insert tab on the ribbon, into the block panel and click on insert here, and you'll notice the only block available is, strangely enough, your ISO A1 landscape title block, which I've inserted into the FM drawing when you download it from the lynda.com exercise file. So I'll click on it, and as I come into the drawing area now, can you see it's sitting on that bottom left corner of the title block? The insertion point I'm going to set to 0, 0, and then press enter. Now it should go directly onto your sheet like that, so everything sits nicely. So the actual title block, you'll notice there, can you see, sits inside those dashed lines, so everything plots within those dashed lines. If it doesn't sit properly, just right click on the tab here, Page Setup Manager, and select your page setup. Go to Modify, and what I would do is I would actually set it to Extents, and then center the plot like that. And then click on OK. You'll be prompted, do you want to edit those references and everything else? Say yes, and then close, and it will center automatically. Sometimes AutoCAD has this tendency to place the title block in weird places. So modify your page setup, set it to extents and center the plot, and it will center every time. So that's your proprietary title block all in place, ready for the next step. Now remember, we're working with this drawing all the way through the chapter. So just leave the drawing where it is and then go to the next video. You'll notice we've stayed in the 00 ground FM underscore fin.dwg. Obviously you'll be using 00 ground underscore fm.dwg at this point. Now what we're going to do is we're going to save our drawing at this point. So I'm just going to go up and click on save on the quick access toolbar, and that drawing at the moment can be parked and left here with its tab at the top of the drawing area. I'm now going to go up to open, and I'm going to open up our structural plan drawing. Now you will be using this drawing here, 00 ground GA. Remember, I'm using the fin versions, the finish version, so I will open that one there. So the good thing about AutoCAD, I can have as many drawings open as I like. So there you go, I've got different tabs open at the top of the screen. And this is our structural plan, our facilities plan. You can see the doors, the windows, the walls, the fireplaces, the bathrooms, etc. Now, the one thing you must do before you bring this GA plan into your facilities management drawing as a reference is you must make it as small as possible. Quickest way to do this is purge. So just type the word purge, press enter, and there's the purge dialog box. Now it is quite long and thin, so I'll just bring it down so you can see it. And you want to be here, view items you can purge. Now you'll notice I've got nothing available to purge. If you did, there'd be little plus signs next to each of these categories. So basically, this drawing is clean. There's nothing to purge out of it. Now, if you do get any plus signs, just go in and select the elements and obviously purge them out of the drawing. Once you've purged, you can hit close on the dialog box and you're done. And again, just hit that save button to save that drawing there. So that's all you've got to do when you're working with your structural plan. You don't need to change the file name or anything like that yet. We will look at that in a little while. But work with your structural plan, get it as lean as you possibly can so that when you reference it in, it doesn't make your FM drawing size too big. There's always this mistake where you bring in a very, very bulky structural plan underneath the facilities management drawing, and it can make the FM drawing very big and unwieldy with too many layers, too many blocks and things like that. So work with your structural plan and get it nice and lean, and then save it ready for the next video. You'll notice I'm still in the GA structural plan drawing right now. What we're going to look at now is just creating and managing our FM drawing. Now the good thing is it's still open. It's over here. I just click on the tab and there it is there. Now I've already put the proprietary title block into my FM drawing. So if I just click on it like so and then hover over it like that, you can see that it's a block reference and it's on layer 0. So ideally we want that on a different layer. So what I'll do now is just go back to the Home tab on the ribbon, Layers panel. Mine's a bit squished due to the resolution of my screen, and I just want to change the layer that it's on. I want to put it on the A Anno title block layer, which is in the FM drawing already. Now the reason I'm putting everything onto layers, especially in your FM drawing, is to make sure that when you create an FM drawing, everything is layer specific, so that you can isolate layers and switch things on and off and freeze and thaw layers and so on. So that is our layout tab all done. I'm now going to go back to the model tab here, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new layer ready for when I bring in the reference drawing, the structural drawing, the GA. So I'm going to go in here into my layer properties, and you can see I've only got the 3 layers: 0, A Anno title block and def points. I need to create a new layer. And this new layer in the FM drawing will be FM and then something like the reference plan or whatever. Now, it doesn't matter what you call it, but I normally just call it FM and then XREF, like this. So FM dash and then XREF. And then I know it's the XREFs or XREFs like that. And I'm just going to leave it white. Doesn't matter what color it is because the XREFs will actually bring in the colors of their own layers. So I'll leave that as so. And I'm going to make that the current drafting layer as well, ready for when I reference in my structural plan. So I'll just close that like so, close the layer properties manager, and again, save what you do as you go along. Now I'm saving this so that you've got a finished version to look at, obviously after you've worked along following the videos. Now, one more thing that we do need to create in our FM drawing. Go back to your layer properties again, and just check what layers you've got there. There's one particular layer that you must have in every FM drawing, and it's primarily used in your layout tabs, and that's a viewports layer. So we need to go up here again, and again, just put the FM in front so that you can distinguish it from other layers. And make sure you spell viewports correctly, obviously. And I would give this a nice blue colour, something nice and blue that stands out on a white background. So colour 160, that is. And don't make it the current layer, but then just close the layer properties manager and again save the drawing. So you've now created your FM drawing ready now to reference in your GA plan as the structural plan, the facilities plan. So save what you've done so far, and again we'll now move on to the next video and we'll reference the GA drawing into the FM drawing. So we're in the 00 ground FM fin drawing. Obviously you'll be in 00 ground FM. And what we need to do now is reference in our GA drawing. So this is this drawing here, the GA drawing that I've already got open. So we're going to reference this into the FM drawing and utilize the outlines of all of the rooms and the spaces for our space management. So if you look at that, I need to bring that entire ground floor of that building into my FM drawing. And I do this by way of external references or XREFs. So I go back to the FM drawing now. Make sure you've got the FM drawing open like so. And what we're going to do, we're going to go to the Insert tab here on the ribbon, and we're going to use the Attach command. So I click on Attach, and you'll notice now it takes me into a folder where there's some drawings. They're not the right drawings. The right drawings are actually going to be in my Setting Up a Facilities drawing chapter there, which is the chapter we're in. I'm going to go into the Drawings folder like so. Now you'll see there's lots of different files in there. Now the reason you've got these DWL files is that means it's a drawing lock file, and that's because the drawing is already open elsewhere. It doesn't stop you referencing in the drawing at all. So I now need my GA fin DWG, that one there. So I click on Open like so, and it links me into now the Attach External Reference dialog box. So there's my file name. The scale you will leave at 1:1. Everything will be 1. You don't even need to worry about Z because it's a flat 2D drawing. And the insertion point will be 0, 0, like so. So leave all the X, Y, and Z at 0. It's an attachment. Make sure you set it to an attachment. No rotation angle, leave it at 0, and then just hit OK. Now that comes in, and you'll notice it's sitting there now in your FM drawing. Now what I've done with that reference is I've made sure it's used what they call a relative path in the previous dialog box. So make sure that your FM drawing and your GA drawing are always in the same folder if you're using the relative path. I'm just going to double click on the wheel there to zoom extents. Now you'll notice it looks kind of faded. If I click on it though, it's all one reference, and you can tell it's a reference drawing because AutoCAD takes you into this external reference contextual tab on the ribbon. So we've referenced in the drawing. So how do we check that? Just hit Escape to deselect it. And in the reference panel here on the Insert tab on the ribbon, click on this little arrow here, and that will open up the External References palette. So there you go. There's your GA drawing, and you've referenced that in. Now you can tell it's an XREF because of this little icon here. Tells you it's an XREF. If it's a little blue and orange one like that, it's an actual drawing that is a current drawing. So if I just expand this along a little bit, you can look at some of the details there, and you can see there's the safe path with the little backslash indicating that it's relative, and it's an attachment and not the current drawing. And if I just expand that one, it's opened, and you can see that the reference is loaded into the open drawing. So I'll close the External References palette now, and again, make sure that you save what you've done. So you save your FM drawing with the GA drawing referenced in. So we've got everything in place now. The next step is to start looking at how we make our layer management work. So what we're going to do now is manage our reference drawing layers so that our layer management works in our facilities drawing. We now need to manage our XREF, our external reference layers. So again, we're staying in the 00 ground FM drawing right now. And I'm going to go to the Home tab on the ribbon. Going to jump into the Layers panel and look at my layer properties. Now you'll notice all these grey layers starting 00 ground GA fin. Now those are my referenced in layers. They're coming from the reference file, the attached structural plan, the GA drawing. Now, I don't really want those layer names to be that long and to be that unwieldy, so how do I change that? You'll notice in the Layer Properties Manager, if I expand the XREF out, there's the name of the XREF there. Wouldn't it be nice if the XREF name was just 2 letters? That would make my layer management of my XREF so much easier. So I'm just going to close the Layer Properties Manager, and what I'm going to do now is put the crosshair in the drawing area and type Rename, like so, and press Enter. Now that will bring up the rename dialog box. Select your 00 ground GA there and rename it to FP, Facilities Plan, in the rename field. And that's all you need, FP, nothing else. Click on OK and everything is renamed, or is it? We just need to check. We go to the Insert tab, go to the Reference panel, click on the little arrow here to bring up the External References palette. You'll notice it still says 00 ground GA fin, in your case 00 ground GA. I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to unload it, and then I'm going to right click on it again and I'm going to reload it. Notice it renames to FP. You must unload and reload the reference for it to rename fully. I'll close the External References palette, go back to the Home tab on the ribbon, go back into my Layers panel and into Layer Properties, and now all my reference layers just start with FP and then the little line and then the layer name. So much neater and tidier, and you manage those XREF layers so much more effectively. If I expand out the XREF there now, it says FP instead of that big long drawing name. So that's how you manage your XREF layers once you've referenced them in to your facilities management drawing. And again, I'll save that. And now you've got a finished set of FM and GA drawings that you can refer back to, and they will also be in your lynda.com exercise files so that you can download them and look at how they're set up. We're starting another chapter now in our AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course. And what we need to look at now is getting our FM settings right as well. Now, this is another chapter that you will find also in the other 2 courses in this series, purely because it needs to be in each course in case you do each course individually. So we're looking at getting our FM settings right, and the first thing we're going to look at is our drawing units. Now just before we start, you'll notice I've got a new 00 ground FM settings drawing open, and you can see that the structural plan there has been brought in as a reference file like so. Now make sure that you reference it in like you did in the previous chapter. So if you go to the Insert tab on the ribbon here and go to the Reference panel and click on the arrow, you should have an external reference file in like that, FP. If I hover over that, you can see that that is 00 ground GA settings, which is also in your lynda.com exercise files to download as well. So you want to reference in the GA drawing, rename the GA drawing as FP, and then as a final sanity check, just make sure in your layers here, in the layer properties, that all the layers are showing up as FP, Facilities Plan, for your layer management of your XREF layers. So let's have a look now at our drawing units. Very quick and easy. You just type the word units like so, press enter, and you can see there's our drawing units dialog box. Now I'm working in metric millimeters in this particular course, so I don't really need, when it comes to length, to measure to 4 decimal places. It's a little bit extreme. So we'll make that 1 decimal place. It might not even need to be any decimal places if you think about it. If you're measuring to millimeters, you could actually set that to no decimal places if you wanted to. When it comes to angles though, you might need a little bit of precision. It does depend. I normally set it to 1 decimal place, just to be on the safe side, in case you do need to specify an exact angle, perhaps if you rotate a building to correct coordinates, for example. Direction. Make sure that your east is set to 0 so that everything by default goes to 0 degrees and is horizontal. Click on OK there, click on OK there. You've now set up your units in your FM drawing. Yes, it's that quick and easy, and it's now done. And again, make sure you save what you've done, ready to follow along with the next video. We're staying in the 00 ground FM settings drawing file, and just like in the previous video where we set up our drawing units, we now need to look at setting up our drawing limits. Now the reason we set up drawing limits is because the model tab, where we're working most of the time, is actually infinite. And what you've got is a command called zoom all that allows you to zoom to your limits with coordinates set up in the model space. So how do you set up your limits? It's exactly the same process or workflow as you would with your units. You just type the word limits like so and press enter. Now you'll notice, read the command line this time, and you can see that the default lower left corner value is 0, 0. That's where X and Y intersect, the origin, so to speak. Press enter to accept that. That's fine for what we want to do with our FM drawing. Then the upper right corner is very, very small. It's only 420 millimeters by 297 millimeters. Not very big, so we need to make that big enough to work in context with our facilities management drawing. So you can see we're on the ground floor of quite a large building there, so we're going to set our upper right corner to 50,000. So you can see I'm typing in 50,000 in the X input box. I'm then pressing the comma key or the tab key, and the Y value also 50,000. Make sure you get the right number of zeros and press enter. Now, nothing actually happens on the screen because at the moment we've zoomed to the extents of the visible drawn objects. However, if we perform a zoom all, we can zoom to the extents of our limits, if you see what I mean. Now, zoom all is available over here on the nav bar. I can click down here and get my zoom commands, and there's zoom all right there. And you can see now that I've zoomed to the extent of my limits. If I take my crosshair up, can you see we're up near 50,000, 50,000 there on the readout on the crosshair, and down there on the status bar at the bottom of the screen. Now if I do a zoom extents just by double clicking on the wheel of the mouse, that zooms me to the extent of the visible drawn objects, not the extent of my drawing limits in the model tab. So you can see there that we've got 2 different zoom tools available to us, zoom all and zoom extents, and they perform slightly different things depending on our unit settings and our limit settings. We're staying in our 00 ground FM settings.dwg file, and what we're going to look at now is our layer naming strategy. Now, obviously we've brought in our GA plan, our structural plan, and we've renamed it FP. And the reason we've renamed it FP is if I go to the Home tab on the ribbon and go into the Layers panel here and then into Layer Properties, all of my reference layers just start with FP, like so, Facilities Plan. Now you'll notice we've already got a couple of FM layers in the drawing already. We've got the FM XREFs layer that we've used to reference in that GA plan, and we've also got FM viewports so that we've got a viewports layer ready for when we start putting viewports into the layout tabs. So we need to follow that same layer naming philosophy. So I'm going to click up here on new layer, and there's my next new layer. So this is going to be FM, and what you might want to do here is put a dash, and then you might want to put something like space polylines. That's a bit long, so I might just put there spaces. So FM spaces, and give it a good colour that stands out on the dark background. So I'm going to give that a nice sort of cyan kind of colour so that it stands out. I could just use cyan down there if I wanted to, like that. Click on OK, and it's done. There's my cyan layer like so. Now, that's FM spaces. What about space names? What about space attributes and so on? You've got to start thinking about all of your layer naming strategy here. So I'm going to click here on new layer. So we'll have something like FM and a dash, and then we'll have space names, for example, and enter again for that layer. And I might keep it the same color as the spaces polyline. Now, spaces is a little bit generic. You might want to change that to space p-lines, space polylines. So if you need to rename a layer, just right click on it and you can rename the layer. The menu has gone slightly off the screen there, or the other trick is to just click and hold like that, and I can change that now to space p-lines. So FM and then a dash and then space and then P-L-I-N-E-S, space polylines like that. It's entirely up to you what you use as your layer naming strategy. So you can see there, they're all space ones, and I've got XREFs and I've got viewports and so on. So that's how you start building up your layer naming strategy in your FM drawing. Now, something else you might need to set up when you're getting your FM settings right is your gradient fills and your hatch patterns as well, because you will always need to highlight your spaces in your space management drawings. Now, you'll notice what I've done in the 00 ground FM settings drawing is I've highlighted a couple of the areas here with polylines. So there's a polyline there on the FM space polylines layer, and there's a polyline there on the FM space polylines layer. Now you'll notice if you zoom in that I've followed the inside edge of each of the spaces. Can you see that? Now these spaces could be rooms, they could be storage cupboards, they could be showers, they could be toilets, but they're all spaces in your drawings with an area. So the first approach would be in the Facilities Management 101 course. You set up all of your areas. Now in this particular course you're setting up your spaces and what they're used for. And more importantly, you will need to highlight them later for room usage, space usage and so on. So this is why we're getting these FM settings right now. So what I'd like you to do in the 00 ground FM settings drawing is go to your layers panel and make sure you're on the FM space polylines layer, and just go and draw a polyline around the inside edge of a couple of the spaces in the FM drawing. I don't mind which ones, and you can then utilize those for the next two videos. So the first thing we're going to look at is gradient fills. Now, always put your gradient fills and your hatch patterns onto separate layers. So again, Home tab on the ribbon, Layers panel, and into Layer Properties. So what I'm going to do now is create a new layer, and I'm going to call it FM-gradients. Now, gradient fills use their own colors, so it doesn't matter what color this layer is. So I'm just going to set this back to white for now. So there's my FM gradients layer, and it's white. I'm going to double click on the little sheet of paper next to it to make it the current layer. So current layer is now FM gradients. Close the Layer Properties Manager. I'm going to zoom in on the top little area here that I've polylined, like so, and there's my polyline there. Now when you're using gradient fills or hatches, don't use the pick points option when you're actually setting the boundary. Use the select objects option. You'll see what I mean. Go to the Home tab on the ribbon, into the Draw panel, and click on the flyout here. and there's gradient there. So we're going to pick a gradient. Now it prompts you to pick an internal point by default. Don't do that. Go up here to boundaries in the contextual tab for the hatch creation and use this icon here. Select boundary objects, like so. Now there's the gradient setting here, so make sure it's set to gradient and use some colours. Blue and yellow's a bit leery, to be honest. Go for something like a dark grey and then maybe something like a pale grey, and it highlights it quite nicely. And now, because you're picking the actual object itself, so you're going to click on it like so, can you see it highlights and it sits there quite nicely. So there's my gradient fill. I then close the hatch creation and it's done. So I hit escape a couple of times. Now, what's the problem there with that? Well, we need to think about using our draw order. Now, we will cover this later as well, but I need to highlight that now, click on it, and then if I do a right click, can you see draw order on the shortcut menu? Always send your hatches and gradient fills to the back, like that. And then you can see the doors, any room names, space names, area values, and so on. So that's your gradient fills all set up and placed in your 00 ground FM drawing. So in the previous video in our 00 ground FM settings drawing, we set up a gradient fill and used the draw order to send it to the back, and it's right there like so. I'm going to zoom out slightly now and zoom in on the other highlighted area here. Now this is an area, but it's also a space. It's an area because you've bounded it with a polyline and given it an area value. It then becomes a space when you highlight it, name it, and set a use for it. That's the difference between the AutoCAD Facilities Management 101 course, where I showed you how to just to area polyline all of your FM drawing. What we're doing now with space management is we're going to start working towards having all the spaces set up in this particular floor of the building, and they'll all be named and they'll all be highlighted and measured with an area value. Then you can start managing the space. Then you can start working with that space and working how much space you have and so on. Now, the second area we're going to use a hatch pattern on, because you can obviously define your spaces by way of a hatch pattern instead of a gradient fill. You can then perhaps have a legend on the drawing that uses different hatch patterns, different gradient fills to define different spaces. So, using now a different layer, so we go to our layers panel on the home tab on the ribbon and go to layer properties. We now need FM hatches. So we need a new layer and we'll call it FM hatches like so, and just press enter, and then again give it a color. This time the hatches need a color, so I'm going to go with a nice red color this time, color 10, and I'm going to make it the current layer like so. Just double click next to it and then close the layer properties manager. Now again we go to the home tab on the ribbon and the draw panel, click on the flyout, and there's the hatch command. Now again, make sure that you use with the boundaries panel select objects. Do not try and pick points, because when you're polylining these areas, the polylines might have weird shapes and might also have other boundaries inside. So you'll notice the area that we're going to hatch with the curved fireplace there has actually got the doors coming into that particular space. So it'll try and hatch internally inside those two doors as well, the door swings. So always click to the polyline area boundary. Now I'm going to go in here. We want a hatch pattern. So I'm going to set it to a pattern, like so. Go to my hatch patterns. Now your hatch pattern little box there might look a little bit different on the ribbon. That's purely because my ribbon's a bit squished because of my resolution on my screen. I'm going to go for a really simple hatch. I'm going to go for ANSI 31. And then what I'll do here now is I'll click on there. Now it looks like a solid fill. It's not. It's because the scale of the hatch is at 1. So go into the 1 box there. Go for something like 25 and press enter. And you'll see that's a much, much better hatch pattern. In fact, that's still a little bit dense, so I might possibly take that up a bit more. Maybe take that to 30 and press enter. That's perfect. Now look at how that space stands out on that drawing. Now that's how you want it to be, so that you know what that room is going to be used for. That space is now managed, as you can see. You can't miss it. It's got a lovely cyan outline and a lovely red hatch, and it's obvious. And that's what we're trying to do with the space management, is manage the space so that visually, when somebody looks at our space management drawing, they know exactly what each space does. So we're done with the hatch there. We can close the hatch creation like so, and it all stands out beautifully. Now don't forget, select the hatch pattern, right click, draw order. Always send your hatch and gradients to the back, just in case there's any information that needs to be on top, like those double doors coming in at the top of the room there. So that's how you set up your hatch patterns, in a very similar way to how you set up your gradient fills to highlight the spaces in your space management drawings. So we're starting another chapter now in our AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course. And you'll notice we have a new drawing. It's 00 ground FM spaces.dwg. And in the usual lynda.com fashion, you can download it from your lynda.com exercise files. Now remember, you must reference in the GA drawing as the facilities plan, the FP drawing. So just to clarify that, we'll go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, Reference panel, click on the little arrow. There's our external references. If I hover over the FP there, you can see that that is 00 ground GA spaces.dwg, which you can find again in your lynda.com exercise files. Make sure you reference it in as per the previous chapters, rename it as FP, and then right click and make sure you unload and reload so that the renaming kicks in. And then just to clarify, quick sanity check, if you go to your Home tab, into your Layers panel and check your layer properties, you should see that all of your reference layers have FP and then the little line and then the layer name. So it's all about managing your XREF layers that way in the Layer Properties Manager. That's why you rename the XREF like that. So what we'll do is we'll close the Layer Properties Manager now and come back into our Model tab in our 00 ground FM spaces drawing. So the first thing is, why are we using polylines to highlight our spaces in our space management drawing? Well, if you've already done the Facilities Management 101 course, the areas course, you'll understand that a polyline has a physical area. And that's the main reason why we use polylines when we're working in FM in our AutoCAD drawings. So if I list any of these particular space polylines that you can see highlighted on the drawing, let's go for this room here. So there's a room there, you can see that one there. And if I hover over that, you can see it's using the layer FM space P-lines, polylines. So if I type list now and press enter, what I can do is I can select that particular polyline. And when I press enter after selecting it, as you can see, it's got a constant width of 0.00, but it's the area value that we're worried about. Now, I am working in millimeters, so that is an area of square millimeters. So we've got basically 27,050,753.58 square millimeters. So roughly speaking, about 27.05 square meters that room is, give or take. Now, you can see there that it says press enter to continue on the command line. I do that, and obviously the command line drops and you lose the text window. You can also use the F2 key on the keyboard to close that text window as well. So that's why we use polylines. And the other benefit is these are actually physically on top of the facilities plan, the referenced in GA drawing. So if I just highlight that GA drawing and click on it for a moment and hover over it, you'll actually see that it's on a particular layer. So if I hover over that now, you should be able to see that it's on a layer. Now, bearing in mind it's gone to the external reference tab. So if I hover over that, can you see just there, that's a polyline. It's not the actual GA. So just be careful when you hover over. Now you'll notice when you've got that external reference tab, it doesn't highlight and show you the layer. Just hit escape a couple of times and hover over it like that, and you'll see that also it doesn't show you the layer. So how do you check what layer it's on? Well, what you can do is you can select it, just do a quick right click and go to properties, tells you it's an external reference, and it tells you that it's actually on layer 0 right now. Now I can change that layer if I want to. I can click there, and you can see I've got various layers available, like so, space names, GIA, and so on. I don't actually physically have a reference one. Can you see that? So I could potentially create a new layer for it if I wanted to. I'm just going to close the properties palette there and go back to the drawing. So that particular reference file there that we've brought in, if I actually freeze the 0 layer for a moment and go into my pull down here, just scroll up, there's 0 there. If I just freeze that for a moment and then come back into the drawing, look what happens. All I can see are my polylines. That's why we put everything in FM on different layers. Now it's an absolute doddle to highlight those polylines. Can you see that? So that's why we do it. So what I'll do, I'll go back to my layers now and just bring layer 0 back for the moment. But that is why we use polylines. That is why they're there and in our AutoCAD FM drawings, because if we reference that GA in and then use it to create the polylines, we can then freeze the reference and just see the polylines and kind of see the wood for the trees. We're staying in our 00 ground FM spaces.dwg file, and as you can see, we've got the polylines still there, and we've got the GA drawing referenced in as our FP, facilities plan. So we're going to look at utilizing our object snaps now to start creating these polylines that represent our spaces in the drawings themselves. Now, the first thing we need to do is make sure that we're using the right object snaps and that they are switched on. So this means a trip down to the status bar down here. Click on the little flyout arrow next to object snaps. Now you can see there that I've got 5 object snaps switched on all the time. They are endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection and extension. Don't switch them all on because you will quite happily go insane snapping to all and sundry in your facilities management drawing. Been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. Now, those 5 optimum snaps, your running object snaps, are fine for pretty much everything you need for creating polylines to represent spaces. If they're not switched on, it's pretty easy. There's endpoint. If I click on it, the tick goes off, meaning it's off. If I click on it again, the tick comes on, meaning it's on. Once they're all on, those 5, just come down here and now click on the arrow and it loses the menu like so. Make sure here that you've clicked on the object snap icon so it's blue and it's on. You can see there in the little pop-up it tells me it's on. This one here needs to be on as well, object snap tracking, very useful when tracking points to create polylines. And then also across here, make sure you've got your polar tracking on as well. And the angle I normally set it to is the 45-degree one. You don't have to, but 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 135 and so on is a pretty good setting to have. So I'm going to just click on the arrow there, like with the object snaps, to switch that off. Now, once you've utilized those object snaps, you can go in and start polylining any area you want to. So I'm just going to zoom in on this little cupboard area, roughly central to the left slightly. So there's a cupboard area there, and I'm going to utilize the snaps now to create a polyline. So what I'm going to do is just snap to the points that I need to snap to physically create an area polyline. So I go to the layers like so, and I make sure I'm on FM space polylines. And then what I would do is I'd come over here to the draw panel, and this is all on the home tab, I hasten to add, and click on polyline. And then based on whatever method of measurement I'm using, I then utilize my snaps. So you can see endpoint snap, I come across to the next endpoint snap. If you need to zoom in and pan, make sure that you do. Then you can see what you're doing. And then I come across to here, go to that midpoint there, because it's a shared doorway. And then I would just start carrying on polylining until I close that polyline and close that boundary for that particular cupboard or storage area. What we'll look at in the next video is actually creating these polylines and closing them and then looking to check that they've got the appropriate areas as well. We're staying in the 00 ground FM spaces drawing as usual, and we've got the GA drawing brought in as the facilities plan underneath. It's XREF'd in as per previous chapters. So in the previous video we looked at utilizing our object snaps. So they're all switched on and ready to go. What we need to look at now is creating a space polyline. Now you can see there's plenty of them already sitting there on the drawing that I've already created previously and saved with this spaces drawing for you. Let's create one now by ourselves utilizing the object snaps, and then we can look at how that all works, and also more importantly how we actually place the polylines and where the boundary goes. I'm going to zoom into this room here in the center. Get it nice and central on the screen. It's a nice easy one to work with. And also more importantly, can you see the cupboard storage area here? That would actually be a separate space because it's non-usable space. So I'm going to start up here top left in the room. I'm going to make sure in the layers here, in the layer pull down, that I'm using the FM space polylines layer. So make sure that's the current drafting layer. And then obviously make sure all your object snaps and things are on down on the status bar like we did in the previous video. So let's jump now over to the draw panel on the Home tab, into the Polyline command. I'm going to zoom in on the doorway and zoom in and out. It's so much easier to work that way. And I'm going to start on the inner corner, come out to this corner here, and then up to that midpoint there and across, because it's a shared doorway with another space. And it's just a case of click, click, click all the way around the internal edge of the room, because that's the usable space. Now you will see that pink line there is the gross internal area polyline, and the green line is the gross external area polyline. So you can utilize those as well. Now because we're going outside, can you see they just go straight across? I'm not worrying about doorways that go outside. And then I get to this little bit here with the cupboard. So I come to here, up to here, and again midpoint snap because it's a shared doorway. And then I come up here, I get to the midpoint there, and I come across to that right hand corner and just take it all the way up now, and I should be able to get to that corner there. Click there, and then right click, and on the shortcut menu, close like so. Now if you zoom out, you can see that you've now specified a nice, neat, tidy polyline. If I click there, there's my polyline there, ready to be used, and more importantly, to have information taken from it, such as the area. Now the area of any polyline is obviously very, very useful, and when we're working with spaces, that allows us to manage the physical space, the meters squared or the square feet. So that's how we create a space polyline in our space management drawings. I mentioned in the previous video when we were creating our space polylines that we use different spaces. Now, the polyline that we created is this one here. And you'll notice here there is also another small area. So I'm going to zoom in a bit and talk about different space types. So this room here could potentially be used as an office, perhaps a reception room, perhaps even a client meeting room. It's an insurance company that have taken over a residential building as their headquarters offices. So these cupboards could be used for filing, but they're not obviously used, for example, for office space. So what we would do there is we would create a separate FM space polyline for that little cupboard there. So what we do is we'd create basically another polyline like so, utilizing the same object snaps, but they would actually be two different spaces. So I'll just jump around really quickly, just polylining it. It's only a small area, so I'll just zoom in there, make sure I get the right snaps. It's always good to get the snaps nice and accurate first time. So I'll come back to there and come back up to the top here, and you can see the little dot there. That's just telling me that that's the first point. So I click there, right click and close, and we've now got two polylines, but they define different spaces. So this polyline would be defined as, in essence, some sort of room, an office, a reception room. And this polyline would be defined as storage, a cupboard, or non-usable space. So that's what we talk about when we're talking about using different types of space polylines and different types of spaces in our space management drawings. We're starting another chapter now in our AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course. We're going to look now at defining our space areas and how we actually define the area, and more importantly the units of measurement and how we utilize those areas when we're actually working with facilities management in AutoCAD. So you'll see there that we've got a new drawing open. It's the 00 ground FM space areas.dwg file. You can find that in your lynda.com exercise files for download, and as per the previous chapters, what we've done is we've referenced in the GA drawing as the facility plan. So if you go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, and I'll just click on the little arrow here, there's the External References palette showing the FP, the Renamed Facility Plan drawing. If I hover over that there, you can see that the drawing is 00 ground GA underscore space areas.dwg. We've referenced that into the FM drawing, renamed it as FP purely for our layer management. So if I close the External References palette, jump back to the Home tab, go and look in the layer properties, like so, and you can see, look, there's our FP layers, our facility plan layers coming from the reference drawing, and there's our FM layers in the space areas drawing. So I'll just close the layer properties manager. Now what we're going to look at first of all is methods of measurement. Things like units and limits and center lines. Now I'm working in a metric drawing in millimeters. So my method of measurement is going to be decimal. So in my units, if I type units like so, the units command, and press enter, you can see that everything is set to decimal. So my method of measurement is decimal for length, and the precision there is actually 0.00, and that's in millimeters. So it's pretty precise, but I can, if I want to, go to 8 decimal places. Not really needed when you're working in millimeters. And angles, so I've got decimal degrees, and I've got 1 decimal place just in case I need it. Now, by default, AutoCAD always measures counterclockwise by default. Hence, the clockwise box for angles is unticked. I'm working in metric millimeters, so any blocks that I bring in, they're scaled 2 millimeters by way of the insertion scale. And last but not least, the direction here, if I click there, can you see that my base angle is east, which is 0, which means that things like text, if I accept that 0, come in horizontally on my AutoCAD FM drawing. So those are all the sorts of methods of measurement that we will be using when we're working with FM and space management in AutoCAD. So I'll just close all of those dialog boxes down. And also, more importantly, another method of measurement that you will be using will be your polylines for your spaces in your FM drawings. Let's zoom in on one of those polylines. I'm going to go to the top left part of the building here and just zoom in nice and close. If I highlight that polyline there, I'm looking down on that polyline from the top. It's a facilities management plan. So what you've got to think about there as another method of measurement is how high is that polyline off of the ground floor, off of that floor level. Because don't forget, at floor level you have things like skirting boards, network ducting, all that kind of thing. So make sure with your method of measurement that when you're defining that inner area of each space with the polyline, that you're actually putting it around the actual boundary that you want it to go round. So you want to maybe specify that in the project plan or in the notes for the drawing that all polylines are drawn at a certain level above floor level. So there's all the different methods of measurement that we would be using when we're working with our space areas in our facilities management drawings. So we're staying in the defining space areas chapter right now, and we're staying in the same drawing, 00 ground FM space areas.dwg, and we're going to have a look now at using object snaps and center lines in a bit more detail. Now, sometimes when you're defining your space areas, the method of measurement is that you use the center line of internal walls rather than the inside edge of internal walls. So how does that work within an FM drawing? Well, let's have a look at how that works, first of all by making sure that we've got the appropriate object snaps all set up in our drawing. Now, as usual, we've referenced in the GA drawing, and that's renamed FP, Facility Plan, and you should know that from the beginning of the chapter already. But your object snaps are down here on the status bar. Now, you'll notice I've got endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection, and extension switched on. Those are my default running object snaps. If I click on the little arrow there again, the flyout arrow, it loses that menu. Now, if you do a shift and a right click, you can bring up all of your override snaps, overriding those running snaps that I've just shown you in the status bar. So that's how you get access to all of your object snaps when you're working in an FM drawing. So that's our object snaps that we need to work with. What about those center lines? Well, let's have a look at how we would measure a space in one of our FM drawings. I'm going to zoom in on this little room down here, and you'll see as I zoom in, it says linen. Now, you might think, hang on, linen, why have they got a linen cupboard? Well, bear in mind, this is an insurance company's headquarters office in an old residential house. So they would still have a linen cupboard purely for things like tablecloths, for functions and so on. They would have a kitchen and so on and so forth. So let's have a little look at this space here. So can you see, look, there's the gross internal polyline and there's the gross external polyline on the external wall there. And you can see we've got some spaces here. Now I'm going to look at this little space just here. It's a cupboard and it might get used for anything. Storage, who knows. But at this particular point in time, I'm going to go to my layers panel on the home tab, and you can see that I've got the FM space polylines layer as the current drafting layer. My object snaps are on, My object snap tracking is on, which is useful, and also make sure that your polar tracking is on as well. Now, this little space here, if I'm going to go with the center lines using my object snaps, I'd go to the center lines of the walls. Now, the good thing is I've got those nice little midpoint snaps on the doorway. So let me show you how I might do this using object snaps and center lines instead. It's another method of measurement that you might use when you're setting up those space polylines. So you go to your polyline command, like so. And I come in here and I click there on that midpoint snap, go up to that midpoint snap, and now I need to follow the center line of my walls. Now this could get a little bit complicated. It doesn't have to be though. I can now hover on that endpoint snap there and come across using my object snap tracking. And then as I come up now, how do I get to the middle of there? Well, there's no way I can do it. So what I do is I just hit escape or right click enter for that first part of the polyline. Sometimes you have to use these center lines in different ways. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to zoom in on that top wall a little bit. I'm now going to go to my polyline command, come into the drawing area and shift and right click. And I'm going to go for this lovely snap, which is wonderful for centerline measurement when you're defining space areas. Mid between 2 points, and I go for the mid between that point, and lo and behold, look, my polyline is dead center. I hover over that endpoint and come up. It snaps to there. I go down to that endpoint, click there, and enter to finish. Now, I can join these polylines up later to form the boundary. So you can see there, that's how that works. And I would do the same thing down here. So let's do another polyline. Come into the drawing area, shift and right click, mid between 2 points. So I'm going to go from there to there. That starts that way. And again, I line in, come down to there, using the object snap tracking, and come to there, right click, enter to finish. Now, as you can see, I'm using the center lines there, and you might possibly go center line down here. Now, all I'm going to do is just drop another polyline in, purely for speed, endpoint to endpoint, like so, and enter to finish. And then you just use polyline edit, PE enter, select one of the polylines, use join all your polyline segments together, like so. Make sure you select them, that one there, and that one there. Right click to finish, and enter to close out the polyline edit command. And there's your boundary using the object snaps and the center lines method, instead of obviously going to the internal edges of the walls. Sometimes when you're defining your space areas in AutoCAD, you need to highlight an area using something like a hatch or a gradient fill. What you also need to use, perhaps, is also a thing called draw order, which we're going to cover in a little bit more depth. I have mentioned it already during the course, but I just want to show you how that works. So, we're still in our 00 ground FM space areas.dwg file. Going to zoom in on this polyline here. So I'm going to zoom in nice and tight now. Just get that in the center of the screen. So I'm looking at this particular polyline right here. Now, what you might want to do is you might want to highlight that polyline using a gradient fill or something similar. Now, you'll notice there's some doors there. Now, if I put the gradient fill in, it's going to cover up those doors. So let's have a look at how that works with the draw order. So I'm staying in the Home tab on the ribbon. I'm going to go to my Layers panel, and I'm going to go to the Layer pull down here. Now, if I scroll up a little bit, can you see I've got things like FM space areas, FM space names, and so on. I'm going to go for FM space areas just for now. Let's just put it on that layer. You might create a separate layer, FM gradient fills or something like that. It's entirely up to you. I then go to the Draw panel, click on the flyout here and select Gradient. Now, when I select Gradient, you'll see the ribbon change. There's the gradient setting, there's the colours I can use. I'm going to use some very simple colours like a dark grey and possibly something like a pale blue, like that. And when I hover now, can you see I get that lovely kind of feature there? But you must use the Select Objects selection method when you're placing gradient fills or hatches, because as you can see, it hasn't put that gradient fill over the doors. So I come up here and I go Select Object, like that. And then that gives the gradient fill the same area as the polyline boundary. There you go, like that. And then press enter to finish. Now, what do you notice about that area? The doors have gone AWOL. That's because the gradient fill is on top of any detail of the drawing underneath. So I select the gradient fill, and then it's just a right click, draw order, send to the back, And lo and behold, there's the doors, there's the detail. Now also, if I had any space area text in that particular vicinity, if I do that draw order and send it to the back, you'll be able to see the text, the name of the space, the use of the space, the area of the space as well. But that's why draw order is very, very useful. Now, when we're looking at defining these space areas as well, obviously as we work through the course, we will create a space area legend as well. So that highlighting is very important to go in the legend, because you need the highlighting to define the uses of the space. So when you're bringing in something like a gradient fill or a hatch, always use the draw order to send it to the back so that you can see the detail of the space itself in the FM drawing. So we're staying in our 00 ground FM space areas.dwg file, and we're still looking at how we define those space areas on our facilities management drawing. So you'll notice from the previous video, there's our nice gradient fill top left there. You can't miss it. It highlights that room beautifully on the FM drawing. Now, another method of highlighting areas and polylines on your FM drawings, especially for space management, is to utilize a thing called line weight, or LWT in AutoCAD. Now, what you will find is that the line weight setting down on the status bar might not be switched on. So we come down to the bottom right corner and click on the little 3 lines, and you get this great big long menu pop up like that. You can just see towards the top, there's line weight. So you can see that mine is ticked. So that indicates that line weight is on. If I click on it again, it unticks it and switches it off on the status bar at the bottom of the screen. If I click on it again, keep an eye out on the status bar there, and it pops up and it's this little icon here, that line weight icon there. Obviously I want to close the menu now, so I just click on the little 3 lines in the bottom right corner, and there's line weight there, and at the moment it's off, and I want it to stay off at the moment as well. What we're going to do is go to the Home tab on the ribbon, go to the Layers panel, and come into the Layer Properties Manager. Now, you'll notice there's our FM Space Polylines layer right there. And at the moment, it's using a default line weight. Let me just expand that a bit there. So there you go, default line weight for the Space Polylines. So if I click on that default, I can change the actual line weight, the thickness of the lines that makes up the polyline. So I'm going to change that to something like 0.5 millimeters, which as you can see is much bolder, much thicker. And I'll OK that, and you can see the value appears in the Layer Properties Manager. So if I now close the Layer Properties Manager, there's no change. Huh? Why not? Because I haven't switched line weight on down here on the status bar. So I click there. Oh look, there's my polylines. Now if I zoom in and zoom out, what you will find is as you gradually zoom in and zoom out, all the polylines kind of update. It's just a graphics card thing, don't worry. Sometimes your graphics card can be a little bit slow, but all my polylines now are really bright and bold. Quite chunky in fact. And if I zoom in real close, look, you can see as I get closer, I get almost a what you see is what you get. You can see they're quite bold, but because I zoom out, they get a bit blobby, dare I say it. So you can see there that those polylines now are pretty obvious. If I switch off line weight, they go back like that. And also, if I go back to the Layer Properties Manager now, and go in here and switch that back to default. So I go to the 0.5 millimeters, scroll up, set that back to default and OK it, and then close the Layer Properties Manager. If I now switch line weight on again, they don't change because they're all set to the default line weight. Switch that off again, goes grey again on the status bar. So you can see that utilising line weight is a great tool for highlighting your space polylines on your FM drawings. So last but not least in this defining space areas chapter, we're going to look at creating a simple space legend to put on the drawing itself. Now I'm just going to put this into the model space. You might consider putting this into an AutoCAD table, and we'll look at space tables later on in the course. But what I want to do is just highlight this gradient filled room that we've put in here. Now this is going to be a meeting room, so what I need to do is go to the Layer Properties first. So I come into Layer Properties off of the Home tab on the ribbon, and we're going to create a new layer. So I click on New Layer, and as usual we'll start it with FM dash, and this is going to be Space Legend, okay, and we're going to use it to draw all of the elements of the Space Legend and the text for the Space Legend. So what you might want to do there is possibly just put that as a colour that is white, like that, or something simple that stands out. So I'll click on OK. I'll also make it the current layer, like so. And I'm going to close the Layer Properties Manager. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm just going to zoom in on this area here, just so we can see the room there, like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize a few tools that are quite handy in AutoCAD. So first things first, we need to draw a small rectangle to represent a little box of that color, of that gradient fill. So what I'll do, I'll go to the rectangle command on the draw panel, and I'll just click, drag upwards, and we'll make that, say, I don't know, 500, 500, like so. I'm working in millimeters, so that should give me, yeah, that's a reasonable sized little box there. Now that box is going to be filled with this gradient fill color. So what I'll do now is I'll go here to the flyout and select gradient. Now the nice thing is I can match the properties of an existing gradient here. So if I click here and go use current origin or use hatch origin, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to click there, and I'm going to pick on the gradient fill, come into the area here and click like that. And as soon as I do that and pick that internal point, it actually puts that fill into the little box like so. So I'll just press enter now to confirm that, and there's the first part of my space legend. I've got a little box representing exactly the same color as that office, where I filled that office with the gradient fill. Now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more just so we can see what we're doing. Now that box is 500 high, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drop in a little bit of single line text. Not too worried about what the text style is. Start point of the text. Now here's where I cheat a little bit. What I'm going to do is justify it. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to justify my text to middle. So I'm going to go to middle like so. So that'll be the middle point of the text. And I'm going to use the midpoint snap on the box. You'll see why in a moment. So I click there, specify the height of the text. Now we know the box is 500 high. We don't want the text to be 500 high. It's too big. So if I say 300 high, just for now, we're doing all of this in the model space, so it's full size in millimeters. So I press enter to confirm the height, press enter again if I move away there to confirm the 0 angle, like so. And the cursor starts right next door to the box. Don't worry about that. So I'm just going to type in there office, like that. So it's an office that we're using, and I press enter once, enter twice, just to finish off the single line text command. So if I click there now, can you see we've got a middle grip there, and we've got the default left grip there. So if I go to the middle grip and click, if I zoom in, you can see that a bit better. There we go. Click there. Using my polar tracking, can you see I can drag that along now? And I'm just going to place it just a little bit off from the square there with the gradient fill. Hit escape a couple of times, and there is my space legend on my drawing. It's pretty basic, pretty simple, but what you would do is you would repeat that now with more of those squares, filling them with each gradient fill for each type of space on your FM drawing. And that's how you create a space legend for your space management FM drawings. We're starting a new chapter now, all about annotating our spaces in our facilities management drawings. And as usual, we're starting with a new drawing, which is 00 ground FM annotate.dwg. You can find that in your lynda.com exercise files. Make sure, though, that you do attach the GA drawing. So like before in previous chapters, I'm going to go to the Insert tab, just go to the Reference panel and click on the little arrow there to open up my External References palette. Now you'll see there's an FP drawing there that's referenced in, and you can see that that is 00 ground GA annotate.dwg. And then once we've attached it to the FM drawing as an XREF, an external reference, we rename it to FP, as you can see there in the External References palette. If I go back to the Home tab on the ribbon, go into my layers and my layer properties here, you can see that all of my FP layers are there. Those are my facilities plan layers from the attached GA drawing. Now, I'm in the Layer Properties Manager, and what we're going to look at is text styles and setting up some text styles for our labels to annotate our spaces. So it's good that we're in the Layer Properties Manager. I'm going to create a new layer, and my new layer is going to be called FM-space, And then you'll notice we've already got some in there. We've got space areas, space names, space polylines. We need space numbers. What we're going to look at is a field that allows us to put our space numbers in there. And those numbers are going to be applied with what we call attributes and things. Now, I'm just going to put this new layer in now while I remember. So I'm going to put in there space numbers like that. And again, pick a color. Now I'm going to leave it as color 130. I want all of my areas, names, polylines the same colors so they're consistent. It's up to you. You don't have to have them the same color. And I just press enter and just add that layer there like so. Now what we're going to look at is text styles and how we set them up. So the first text style I'm going to look at is actually going to be our space names. So let's make sure that space names is the current layer. Double click next to it like so, and then close the layer Properties Manager. Now I'm just going to zoom in on this top left polyline that is already highlighted in the drawing, and we now want to add a space name. So you can do this in two ways. Your text styles are available from the Home tab on the ribbon, here in the Annotation flyout. So if I click there, that takes me to text style there. I'll just cancel that. I can also go to the Annotate tab here, and if I go to text and click on the arrow in the title bar, you'll see it's exactly the same dialog box. So it's entirely up to you. Personal preference, I like to be in the Home tab with all of my tools there. I click on the flyout here and click here, and we're going to create a new text style to use with our space names. So you'll notice there's one there, Room Names Model, and if I select that, can you see it's a Verdana font with a font style of regular, and it's got a height of 0. So basically AutoCAD will prompt you for the height when you put the text into the drawing. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete that one. I'm going to right click on it, and you'll notice I can't delete it because it's the current text style. So I'll go to Notes Layout 3.5, set as current, right click and delete that R Names model like so, and OK it. I'm now going to click on New, and the new style name will be Space Names. So we're going to put SP and then names like that. So space names, and then I'm going to do an underscore, and this is the way that I always create text styles in AutoCAD. So I specify the name of the text style, then an underscore, and then the space in which it can be used. So space names in the model space. I'm going to OK that now, and there it is there. I'm going to select the font that I want. Now, a little trick here. I've deliberately deleted the Room Names one to show you this little trick. If I click here like so, there's a great big long list of fonts that I can use. The ones with the TT next to them are the best. They're TrueType fonts. They all come in from your Windows operating system. If I press V once, it takes me straight to Verdana on the list. And I've then got font style regular, leave the height at 0. I don't want this to be annotative text at this point. I'm going to leave it as it is. I can have it upside down. I can have it backwards. I can have width factors changed. I can have oblique angles changed. We don't need any of those settings changed. We just want regular Verdana font for our SP Names model text style, like so. So before you close out now, make sure you set it as the current text style. And do you want to save your changes? Absolutely. So I'll say yes, and then I click on close. So you'll notice now when I click on the flyout there for annotation, SP Names model is the current text style. If I go to the Annotate tab, SP Names model is the current text style. That's the style that we're going to use to put our space names into our FM drawing. We're staying in our 00 ground FM annotate.dwg file with the FP, the facilities plan, the GA drawing referenced in. Now I've stayed zoomed in on that area that I zoomed into on the previous video, which is the top left of the facilities management plan. Now what we're going to look at after we've set up our text style is we're now going to look at using annotative scaling to make sure that our text remains consistent in size across different scaled viewports in the Layout tab. Now that might sound very, very complicated. It's not, trust me. So what we need to do first is make sure that in our Home tab on the ribbon, we go to the Layers panel here, Layer Properties, and you'll notice we have a layer called FM Viewports there. Can you see it, that one there? Now that's a layer that's set up specifically to put viewports into our Layout tab of our drawing. I'm going to make that the current layer, double click next to it, and I'm just going to slide along the slider bar here and make sure that we're set not to plot. Can you see that little plotter icon there? If you click on it, can you see the little no entry symbol disappears? That means it will plot when I plot the drawing. If I click on it again, it's set to not to plot. You want it set with the little no entry symbol so that our viewports don't plot if we plot our drawing. So we're in the viewports layer, ready to go, so we can close the layer properties manager. I'm now going to go and click on 00 ground, the layout tab. And as you can see, I'm now in the layout tab with our proprietary title block. And I'm going to go to the layout tab here on the ribbon. And I want 2 rectangular viewports. There's the layout viewports panel. Click on rectangular viewport. I'm just going to click and drag here, create one there like that. And then I'm going to click and drag again to create another one. So rectangular viewport again. And they don't have to line up. I'm just going to do that like that. 2 viewports. Now if I double click inside this viewport, it activates it. Come down here to the status bar, switch off the grid, double click outside the viewport to deactivate. Double click inside the viewport to activate, switch off the grid, double click outside the viewport just to deactivate. Now I haven't set any scales in those viewports yet because I want to go back now to the model tab and put some text in here. So we need to change our layer. And I'm going to come in here now, and our layer now is going to be, if I scroll up on the slider bar, it's going to be our space names, okay? FM space names there. So it's going to be the name of the space, whether it's an office, a kitchen, or whatever. So just make sure that that is the current layer that you're using. Now we need to place some text. Now we set our text style. Just check it, annotation flyout, SP names model space. There's our space names model space text style. I'm just going to place a piece of single line text. So on the home tab on the ribbon in the annotation panel, click on the flyout, single line text, and that's a bathroom. So I'm just going to click here and specify the start point of my text, and the height of the text, it's prompting me, I'm going to make it 300 and enter to finish, and the rotation angle will be 0 horizontal, enter to confirm. And there's our little cursor. So I now type bathroom like that, enter once, enter twice. So that is 300 high. I'm now going to come into the next room here, which is going to be an office. I'm going to repeat the last command. So press enter or space bar, and there's the command again, start point of text. Height again is 300, enter to confirm, because it remembers it from last time, and 0 for the angle, horizontal. And this one's going to be office, like so. So those are my 2 spaces named. Enter once, enter twice to close out the single line text command. Now the text in both of those rooms, in the model space, full size, is 300 millimeters high. Now the text at the moment is not annotative. I'm now going to make it annotative. I'm going to go back to my text style here, like so. Text style there, and I'm going to select it there, and I'm going to make it annotative, like so. And the paper text height, I want it to always be 3 millimeters high. Okay? I apply that now, and I close. Now that text, if I hover over those texts there, can you see they're not annotative? So what I've got to do is I've got to delete them and make sure that I use the annotative text style. You cannot kind of retrofit text. Now it's very important that you remember that. If it needs to be annotative, you've got to go back and remove the text. So now, if I do single line text again, and you'll notice now it's prompting me to select an annotation scale. I'm going to leave it at 1:1 and just OK it. You can switch off this dialog so it doesn't keep popping up all the time too. So I'm going to specify a start point, rotation angle, make sure. Now can you notice there, hasn't asked me for a height. So the text now is going to come in at 3 millimeters, or is it? Well, yes it is, because I've set my annotation scale to 1:1. So if I just hit escape there, and then set my scale here. So if I change that to say 1:100. So now I'm going to make my viewport 1:100 so that the text will appear the right height. So let's have a look at that now. If I go back to single line text and click here and then specify a 0 angle of rotation, that cursor looks remarkably familiar, doesn't it? So if I do bathroom there, like so, enter once, enter twice, to close out the single line text. If I hover over it, can you see that little symbol there? Looks like a little sort of triangular symbol. That's telling me that that text is annotative. Now, I'm just going to select that text. I'm going to right click and go to properties to bring up the properties palette. Can you tell it's got an annotative scale of 1:100, and can you see a paper text height of 3 with a model text height of 300, which is grayed out. So the text in the model space is 300, and at 1 to 100 scale it will appear as 3 millimeters high. So I'm going to close that, go to my Layout tab, and I'm going to double click in this particular viewport. I'm going to come down here and make the scale of that viewport 1 to 100. So now, if I just double click to deactivate the viewport and zoom in there, that text appears because it's got an annotation scale of 1 to 100. If I zoom out and zoom in on this one, the text has not appeared because this particular viewport does not have a recognized scale. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click in here, like so. I'm going to zoom on that bathroom and make it fill the viewport, like so. And I'm going to give that a scale of, say, 1 to 30. And that fits quite nicely there. Can you see that fits nicely in the viewport? Double click outside the viewport to deactivate it. So this 1 to 100 viewport on the left has an annotation scale of 1 to 100 on the text, so it appears in the viewport. What do I do to get the text to appear in this viewport at the same size? Well, what I need to do is switch on an annotation scale back here in the Model tab. I select my text, right click, and come up here to Annotative Object Scale and Add Delete Scales. At the moment we've got 1 to 100. If I add now my 1 to 30 for the other viewport, the right hand viewport, and OK that now, it's got 2. If I hover there now, can you see it's got 2 little annotative symbols. If I go back now to my 00 ground layout tab, can you see my text has appeared in the other viewport as well? So I've got text in the 1 to 100 viewport, text in the 1 to 30 viewport, but what do you notice about that text? It's consistent across the layouts there. Can you see that? So consistent, each layout in each viewport, can you see, has the same text height. So it works really, really well for annotative scaling. Now it's up to you if you use that scaling in your FM drawings. It's just a neat little trick to keep everything consistent and the same height when you start bringing everything into your layout tabs. We're staying in our 00 ground FM annotate.dwg file. And as you can see, I've jumped back into the Model tab in the drawing, and I've zoomed in to that top bathroom in the top left area of the drawing. You'll remember the one we placed the text in the bathroom when we were talking about annotation scaling in the previous video. So you can see the bathroom there, you can see the bathroom text there. What we're going to look at now is using text fields. Now these are lovely pieces of machinery. These are great because what they allow you to do is link to the polylines of your spaces, such as the polyline for the bathroom, and convert it to a text field. Now, the area of that particular polyline can be converted to text and dropped into the drawing using the X data around the polyline. Now, the X data is all the information that is stored with the polyline, such as area, perimeter, and all the coordinates of all the vertices on the polyline. So how does that work? Well, what we'll do, we'll go to the Home tab on the ribbon, which we're in at the moment. I'm going to do single line text again, like so. And I'm just going to click on single line text, come into the drawing area. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about lining it up with the bathroom text. I'm just going to pick a point, like so. And it says rotation angle of text. Now, because we're using that particular style that is annotative, that's fine. I'm just going to press enter to accept the 0 for the rotation angle of the text. And there's my cursor there. So I'm just going to type some text now. And it's going to be AA, like that. And then enter once, enter twice to finish. Now, if I double click on that text, I can edit it. And you can see it goes a kind of bluey grey colour. If I right click now on that text to be edited, you'll notice I can insert field. So as soon as I do that, it brings up the field dialog box. Now, this might look a bit weird, and you're thinking, what is all that data in that column on the left? You go up to field category and select objects. Then in the field names column, you select the word object. Now you'll notice we don't have an object type yet, so we use the select object icon here. Takes me into the drawing. I select the polyline for my bathroom, the space that makes up my bathroom. Now we have a polyline. There's the property area, and you can see it's quite large. That's because it's in square millimeters. Now we can change the precision there because square millimeters, we can take that to no decimal places, no problem at all. However, if I go to something like current units, can you see that changes again? And what we're going to do, we're just going to accept that, and we're just going to click on OK. And as you can see, we've got a great big long number there. Now that long number is millimeters squared because the drawing is in millimeters. So if you take that decimal place back to there, between the 6 and the 2, it's telling me that it's 16.283690 square meters, that bathroom. So those text fields take the X data from the polyline onto the drawing as annotation. It's kind of cool when you think about it. So I'm going to press enter there to confirm, and enter again just to finish the text edit, and there's my area of my bathroom in square millimeters. In the next video, what we're going to look at is those text field settings to make that look a little bit more sensible. We're going to convert it to square meters. So let's jump into that next video now and look at how those text field settings allow us to annotate our space management drawings even further. In the previous video, we created our text field with the big long number in square millimeters, as you can see in the bathroom there on the screen at the moment. And that's in our 00 ground FM annotate drawing that you've been using for this particular chapter of the course. So what we're going to look at now are our text field settings. Now you'll notice in the previous video when we placed the text field, it has this weird sort of greyish kind of background to it. It's called background masking, and that background masking defines it as a field rather than just a regular piece of text. Don't worry though, because that does not plot if you plot the drawing at any time. It's just highlighting it on the drawing as a field rather than text. Now I'm just going to double click on it as you would edit any other piece of text on an AutoCAD drawing, and as you can see it highlights in that bluey grey colour again. I'm going to right click on it now, and you'll notice because it's a field I can select edit field on the shortcut menu, and it opens up the field dialog box again. Now what we need to do is we need to actually edit the settings of this text to make it look sensible. We don't want to be measuring rooms in millions of square millimeters. That's kind of daft, to be honest. And that's an English word, daft. Okay, so we go to additional format like so. Now the conversion factor we need is 0.000001. Get the right number of zeros, otherwise this will go completely and utterly wrong. Now if I just press tab there, watch the current value at the top and then look at the preview. Can you see the current value is this crazy amount of millimeters with a crazy amount of numbers after the decimal place? Our preview is showing 16.28 square meters. Now I can put a suffix on this as well. So if I go to suffix there and put a space and then sq.m square meters, don't need to worry about the zero suppression leading or trailing at the moment because we haven't got any. We've only got 16.28 square meters. When I click on OK, there's the preview there. Now if I go to decimal and change the current precision there to just one decimal place, rounds it up nicely to 16.3 square meters. When I click on OK now, 16.3 square meters in my bathroom, press enter to confirm that, and then enter to finish the command. Job done. So that's how you edit those text field settings, just to make everything look sensible. You don't want to be measuring rooms in millions of square millimeters, so go in, use that additional format button in your field edit tools. In AutoCAD, there's a really neat little trick you can use for your space numbers. Obviously, when you're placing your polylines in your drawing, in your FM drawing, to represent your spaces, you want to be able to number them and link them to your table data later on when you make a table that obviously covers all of your space data. So we're staying in the 00 ground FM annotate drawing. What we're going to do, we're going to go to the Home tab on the ribbon. We're going to go to the Layers panel here, and we're going to go to Layer Properties. We're going to make sure that we have an FM space numbers layer, which we do. But we're not going to make that the current layer. We're going to make 0 the current layer. Because when you create blocks on layer 0, when you drop them into the drawing, they automatically go onto the current layer. So what we'll do now is we'll close the Layer Properties Manager, like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in where the bathroom text is, just above it, like so. And I'm going to create a little block here. Now what we want is we want our number to be 200 millimeters high using a new text style. So I'm going to go and create a new text style first. Go into the text style here in the annotation panel. And we want it to follow our space names model text style. So if I leave that as the current style and click on new, it adopts the same settings. So we're going to have now space, SP, and then numbers, like so. And again, underscore a model so that we know where it's being used. And I click on OK. Now you can see there's space numbers model. We do not want it to be annotative this time. It's just a label on the drawing. So the height itself I'm going to set to 0 in this case so that AutoCAD can prompt me for the height. Going to stick with the Verdana font and the regular font style, that's fine. Everything else, the effects, I'm going to leave as is. So I'll apply that now, set it as the current style, so that's SP numbers model, like so, and then close. Now the text itself is going to be 200 high, and what we want is we want a boundary around the little box that's going to go around the number. So we're going to make it, roughly speaking, 25 all the way around. So that's going to make a box that's 250, isn't it, if we think about it, high. So the box has to be 250 high with a number inside it that is going to be roughly 3 digits long. So we'll just mess around with numbers a little bit here, and what we'll do with the layer 0, I'm going to go to the rectangle command on the draw panel, pick a point and drag upwards to the right, and I'm going to say that it's going to be 400, 250, like that. Enter. And there's our little box. Now that little box is not going to be that big on the drawings anyway, and I'm going to zoom in on that box a little bit now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place an attribute in that box using the text that we've just created. Now, here's the neat trick. Draw a line, take it from one corner to the other. Now, the midpoint of that line is the center of the box, and we can now test whether the box is going to work. So, I'm now going to place some text, but it's going to be an attribute. When we make it into the block, the attribute then becomes the space number. So I go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, and I define attributes here, like so. And it's going to be lock position, and the tag will be SPNO, like so, our space number. The prompt will also be space number in the dialog box, and the default we'll put in is 999 because it's going to be 3 numbers. Justification, we want that to be middle center. Text style, space numbers model. So remember that because it's the current text style. We don't need it to be annotative, and we're going to specify the insertion point on screen. Text height, we're going to make sure that the text height is 200 in this case. Rotation 0, we want it to be horizontal. Click on OK, and there's our attribute. Now it does look a bit big. It's not a problem. We can edit the rectangle. But we're going to select that midpoint there because we've said it's going to be middle center. So if I click there like that, places it nice and centrally, but we just need to make the box a bit bigger, don't we? You can see that now. So what we're going to do there is we're just going to stretch the box a little bit each way. It's very easy to do. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the Home tab on the ribbon. I'm going to go to the Stretch command, a little crossing selection across the end there like that. Right click and use the midpoint and just stretch that across like that. And I'm going to take that 50 to the right and enter. There you go. That's made it bigger that way. Same again, do another stretch the other way, only we need to do a crossing selection again. So I'll just cross it like that, and again right click, use the midpoint snap, drag that across, 50, like so, and there we go. The box is a bit bigger. I'm going to delete the line in the middle, that needs to go now, and we'll just remove that. So there's our little box there, like so, with our little attribute in the middle. Going to make it into a block, so I go to the Insert tab, and I come down here, Create Block, like so. Now, the name of the block will just be our space number. So if we do SP and then number, like so, space number, pick point. Now, the point itself doesn't matter. We'll pick a point. I'm going to go for that bottom left corner there. That's where I'm always going to use to snap and drop in the block whenever I need to. As you can see, there's no way I could have guessed those X and Y values. We're going to select the objects that make the actual space number, like so. So that's the attribute and the rectangle. Right click to confirm. And I'm actually going to delete the original objects. Scale uniformly is fine. Allow exploding is fine. You might need to explode it to make a different type of block with attribute. So everything's done. So as soon as I now click on OK, that'll disappear. I'm going to go back to the Home tab now, into the Layers panel. Change my layer now to my SP space numbers, remember? So that's going to be my current layer. back to insert, and I'm going to insert the block now using the insert block command. There's my SP number, bring it in. You'll notice there, can you see that it's the same color as that FM space numbers layer? That's because we created the block on layer 0. So if I click there now, prompts me now for the space number. I'm going to say that this is room, let's say 01. I'll OK that, and there's my room number or space number. In this case we're doing space management, so it would be your space number. So if I zoom out now, I've got a space number all set up using blocks and attributes in AutoCAD. We're now going to have a look at setting up our space text on the drawing itself, on the FM drawing. So we're staying in the 00 ground FM annotate.dwg drawing that we've been using to work through this particular chapter. Now, in previous videos we set up the bathroom text and we set up the area value text there, the 16.3 square meters. They're both using an annotative text style using single line text. What we're going to do, we're going to go to the Home tab on the ribbon. I'm going to come into Annotation here and into my text style. Now, the SP Names model is the one that is annotative. I'm going to switch that off, like so. I don't want it to be annotative anymore. I'm going to set the text height to 0 so that AutoCAD will have to prompt me for my Space Names text heights. Once I've got that in place, I can actually just OK that. So that's all done, like so. And we've got space numbers there as well. Now, the current style has been modified. Do you want to save your changes? Yes, I do. So that's changed, and I'm going to close it like so. So you'll notice now these are still annotative. I'm going to delete them. I'm going to delete both. Now, the reason I'm deleting both is we're going to create the text now using multi-line text instead, and using that particular style. So I now want SP Names model here. So can you see I've got SP Numbers, SP Names. I want SP Names model. Into the layer panel and make sure that you've got the right layer. So in the pull down now, just going to scroll up a bit and I want SP Space Names. Now we want the space name and the space area. These go on different layers, so we need a different bit of multi-line text for each one. We're doing space names first, which is the bathroom. So into the annotation panel, click on the flyout and select multi-line text. Going to pick a point just below the number there, click and drag, and select the space where the text is going to go, like that, about there. Now as soon as I do that, can you see that everything changes? I've now got the text editor on the ribbon, and you can see I've got a little cursor there flashing at me. So I'm going to type bathroom, like so, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click away from the text, and you'll see that that text disappears. No, it hasn't disappeared, it's just very, very small. So if you zoom in, it's using that paper height from the original annotative. So I need to double click on the text, highlight it like so, and change the height in here, the value, to 200. Press enter, suddenly much bigger. Close the text editor now, zoom out, and you can see that text is now the right height. I'm just going to click on it, click on the grip there, and just drag that slightly to the right, just to line it up a little bit like so. So there's my bathroom, my space name. Now I need my space area as well. So let's place that into the drawing as well. Change the layer first, like so. So you want space areas this time. So scroll up the list there. Space areas are there. And make sure you're on the right layer. Again, multi-line text. And just pick a point and drag. Again, I'll line these up at a later time. So I do that like so. Now I need the area of the polyline this time. So you'll notice what I can do is go straight to field now in the text editor on the ribbon. So remember that I'm using objects, so I don't need to worry about going through the category and things. Select object here, click on the polyline. There's the information there. I now click on OK. There's the text, and it's still got that 3 going on. So make sure you highlight the text, change it here to 200, and press enter. Make sure it's the right size. And when you close the text editor and click away, you'll see it goes to the right height. Don't worry about the text looking a bit weird in the multi-line text editor sometimes. What happens there is it's remembering previous settings from when that was annotative. It's not annotative anymore, but it's kind of getting a little bit confused about the scaling. Just put the values in and click away from the text. AutoCAD will sort it out in the background, and it's now the right height. So everything's all set up and ready to go there now, and what we've done is we've set up all of our text settings in our FM drawing. In the previous video, we changed two things with our space text in our FM drawing. So we're staying in the 00 ground FM annotate drawing, and you'll remember in the last video we set our bathroom text and the area of the space to basically multi-line text. So we've got two bits of multi-line text there now. And also we changed the text style from annotative to non-annotative, because at the end of the day these are just labels. They don't have to be perfectly scaled in viewports. It's entirely up to you if you want to utilize that particular method. So what we're going to look at now is utilizing the multi-line text to insert some symbols into our data for each of our spaces in our FM drawing. Now the 01 is fine, that's a block, and that's got an attribute, and we're going to look at that later when we start looking at space tables in the drawing itself. The bathroom text is multi-line text, and that is in essence the space name, the name of the space represented by the polyline over here. Now here's the one we need to look at, the multi-line text that represents the area, our space area. If I double click on that multi-line text, I can edit it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the text like so, and then right click on it, and you'll see that I can edit the field like so. Now I'm going to edit the field, and it takes me into the field dialog box. So you should recognize this. There's object, there's the property area of the polyline, and there's that huge area value in the millions of square millimeters. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to additional format, but before we do that, what we're going to do is make sure our precision is set to 0.0 there, so we only want one decimal place. Go to additional format and type in the conversion factor 0. Dot, and then 1 2 3 4 5, and then 1, like that. So it's 5 zeros after the decimal place. That gives me a preview of 16.3. Now you'll notice I'm not putting a suffix in this time. You will see why in a moment. I'm going to click on OK, like so. Click on OK in the field dialog box, and there's my 16.3. Now remember, we're utilizing multi-line text, so I can now put a space in. I can put M for meters, but the best bit about multi-line text, I can use symbols. So I click there, there's my squared symbol, meters squared, close the text editor, and I've got 16.3 meters squared. Doesn't that look nice and neat and tidy? Now I have to say, the space between the 3 and the M there looks a bit big, so I'm just going to double click there, delete that space, and then I'm going to click away from the text, and you can see it looks great. Now the background masking, the grey, does not plot, so that will not affect the text. If I zoom out slightly now, you can just see, look, there's my 01, my room, my space number, my space name, bathroom, and my space area, all set up and annotated nicely in my facilities management drawing. We're starting a new chapter now in our AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course. And as you can see, we've got a new drawing there, 00 ground FM SP table setup.dwg. The reason being is we're setting up the space table style in this particular chapter. So you can see we've got our FM drawing there, and you can see that we've got our FP drawing, our GA, referenced in behind. So let's do that quick sanity check like we've done in previous chapters. Make sure you go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, click on the little arrow on the reference panel there, and there's our FP, renamed attached file. Now you will need to attach the 00 ground GA SP table setup.dwg file. All of those are available in your lynda.com exercise files to be downloaded. But remember to rename as FP like we've done in previous chapters. Go to the Home tab on the ribbon, into the layers panel like so, and into the layer properties, and as you can see there's all our FP facility plan layers from our attached XREF drawing. Now staying in the layer properties manager, we're going to be looking at setting up our space table style. So make sure you've got a layer FM space table. You will have. I've saved it in this particular drawing for you when you download it, and I've set it to the color white there, and you can see I've made it the current layer with the green tick. So just double click next to it. Make sure you've got the green tick next to FM Space Table. Going to close the Layer Properties Manager now. And you can see in the drawing there we've got a couple of polylines that have all been set up. and I've got the space, number, name and area there. Can you see? So there's the number, there's the space name, there's the space area. Now that's the information that's going to be linked to the space table later on. But what we need to do is set up the style first. So let's have a look at that first. Now what I can do is I can go to the annotation flyout here in the home tab on the ribbon. I can go to the table style there if I want to, or I can utilize the annotate tab on the ribbon. Go to the tables panel here. Mine's a bit squished due to the resolution of my screen, and there's a little arrow there. If I click there, that also opens up the table style dialog box. I'll just close that. I tend to like to work from the home tab on the annotation flyout here and click on table style there. You can see there's already an area table in there. Now we're not going to use that one. We're going to set up a new one. So I click on new and we're going to call it space table. So I'll just remove that first bit. We're using a copy of the area table, so that's no problem. That's just the settings that are already in there. And we're going to click on continue. Now all of these settings in here are for our new table style, our space table. So the style is there. What we've got to think about now is setting up the title, which is in the yellow bar there, the headers and the data. And we're going to work our way through these as we develop our new table style. So you can see here we're going to create our title, we're going to create our header, and we're going to create our data. So I'm going to draw it to a close there in this particular video, and then we're going to move into the next video and start looking at developing our space table for use in our facilities management drawings. So we're staying in the same drawing, the 00 ground FM SP table setup.dwg file, and you'll notice I've left the new table style space table dialog box open because we're going to look at setting up each part of our space table. So we're going to look at setting up the actual title of the table style. So we're in the table style dialog box, we go to the cell styles here and we select title, like so. Now you can see there that we've got three tabs, general, text and borders. Click on the general tab. You can see that the fill color right now is yellow and the alignment of the text is middle center. Now all of this will show over here in our preview on the left. Now the format of the title cell style in our table is going to be text. Now I can click here like so, and this sets the data type and formatting. So I can say it's just text, and I want it to be in uppercase. So I can select the uppercase setting and click on OK. So it'll always be uppercase in the drawing when I bring the table style in. Now this particular type of text is going to be a label or data. Well, it's going to be a label because it's not going to change. It's just going to give us the name of our table. And the margins there, I've set them to 2.5mm. That should do for our purposes when we bring it into our layout tab in our AutoCAD FM drawing. Now you can see a little preview of it. It's not that clear because the text itself is white. Now at the moment that's white on a black background. When I go into the layout tab background is actually white and the text will appear black, as will all of the boundaries and the lines on the cells on the table. So what we've done there is we've set up the general tab for our title so far. Let's check the text now here, the text tab. Text style at the moment is standard. If I click on the down arrow, I can go and pick any particular text style that is in my drawing. Standard is fine for what we want at the moment. And the text height, we've set that to 6mm in the layout tab. And the text color, should always set that to by layer. So that will go on our FM space table layer. Text angle 0 because it's horizontal. And then we click on the borders here, and you shouldn't need to change any of these apart from these here. Set them to by layer so they go on the FM space table layer. And that's quick and easy, like so. Do I want to double line it? Well, I could if I wanted to, and that would give a double line around the top part of my table, the title of my table. So we've set up the title of our space table now. What we're going to do now in the next video is start looking at these blue headers here that you can see in the preview. So we'll call it a close here. In the next video, we'll look at our headers of our space table. Once again, we're staying in the 00 ground FM SP table setup.dwg file. We haven't moved out of the drawing and we're still in the new table style space table dialog box. What we're going to look at now is setting up these nice little blue headers in our table style. So we go to the cell styles again, and this time we select header, and we go to the general tab once more. Now you'll notice I've changed the fill color here to a cyan color. That's purely to distinguish it from the title field above, the title cell above. The alignment again is middle center. The format will be text again, obviously, and it'll be uppercase again like so. So there's the sample there in the preview. Now, is it going to be a label or data? Well, again, it's going to be a label. It won't be data because it won't change. And again, the margins, 2.5mm, is pretty good horizontally and vertically. I'm now going to go to the text tab for our header cell in our table. Notice the text style again, I just left it as standard, which is the Arial font in AutoCAD 2017 that we're using. Text height, 4.5mm, and the text color again, set it to by layer. So it follows that FM space table layer. Text angle there is 0 to keep the text horizontal. And again, with our borders for our header, no double lines this time, but the line weight, again, just set it all by layer. So it all follows the settings of the FM space table layer when we place the table in our FM drawing. It's just quick and easy, and then it all follows that one layer color. So what we've done there, we've set up our header styles, very similar to the title cell style in the previous video, and that's all done. So we're going to draw it to a close again now, and we're going to move into the next video where we're going to look at setting up our data cells, these ones here in the table style as well. So move to the next video now so that we can look at setting up the format for our data cells. So as mentioned in the previous video, we're going to look now at setting up our data cells in our new table style called Space Table. So we're staying, as usual, in the 00 ground FM SP table setup.dwg. We won't have moved out of that drawing because we're setting up the table style for that particular drawing. So again, in the dialog box now, we go to the cell style here and we select data. Now you'll notice we've got the general text and borders, so go to general first here, the general tab. Fill color this time is none. We don't want any fills for our data. The alignment again is middle center, and the format this time again will be text, but this time it will just be sample text. Now why would it be text? Surely it would be something like decimal number or something like general. Well, no. Think about it. We're linking text fields into our space table. These text fields are the X data coming off of the polylines that represent our spaces. So the text fields are very important because we're linking X data into a text field. So it should be text like that, and we're going to have the format set to none, and the format we can set up in our multi-line text editor later in the table itself. So I'll OK that like so. This time the type will be data. It's got to be this time because it's our data cells. And the margins there, horizontally and vertically, again 2.5 and 2.5, just like the header and the title data. So let's go to the text tab now, and you can see the text style is standard, text height is 4.5, same as the headers, text color, again by layer, text angle 0 to keep it horizontal. Go to the borders as well, as usual, set these by layer, so they're on the FM space table layer. So they're all updated. We don't need double line spacing, not for our data cells. So what we've done now is we've finished creating all of the cell styles for our new space table style. So what we'll do now in the next video is we'll look at actually inserting the table into our FM drawing. So we're staying in the 00 ground FM SP table setup.dwg file. As usual, we haven't moved from that drawing because we're currently setting up the new table style, the space table style. Now, we've finished setting up all the cell styles and all the spacings and the layering and everything in the general, text and borders tabs here for each particular cell style. So what we can do now is click on OK. There's our space table there. I'm going to select it in the list on the left, set it as the current table style, and then click on close. So if I now go to the annotation pull down here in the home tab, you can see that space table is my current table style. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to double click now in the model space to zoom extents, like so. I'm then going to go to the 00 ground layout tab. Now you'll notice in previous chapters we have used these two viewports. I'm just going to work with this one viewport here on the left. This viewport I'm going to click on, and I'm actually just going to delete it. I don't need it at the moment. Now the reason I've done that is purely because I want to insert my table here. But before I do that, what I am going to do is just zoom in a little bit and just check that we can see all of our data here. There's our data there. So you can see our space numbers, 01, 02, 03, our space names, bathroom, office, cloakroom, and the areas as well. Now we don't need to worry about the areas per se. We don't actually take this data here in the text field. We actually select the polyline and place the data into the table. And I'll show you that in the next chapter. What we need to do is insert a space table ready for use in the layout tab. So just double click on the wheel again to zoom extents. Make sure in your home tab, in your layers panel here, that you're using the FM space table layer as your current drafting layer. And then I'm going to go to the annotation flyout here, and I've got space table as my current style. And then in the annotation panel, can you see table? I click on the table command, and it prompts me now which table style do I want to use. Now you'll notice in the preview now, look, because we've got that white background, everything stands out really nicely. I'm going to start from an empty table. I'm going to specify an insertion point. Now, column and row settings. How many columns do I need? Well, in this case, I want it the same as the preview. So I'm going to need 3 columns, like so. Column width, I'm going to leave that at 75. We'll probably get away with that with the data that we're putting in. And data rows, I'm going to leave that set to 8, just as a default, with a row height of 1 line each. Now this is the important bit, the cell style. So the first row cell style will be the title, the name of our space table, which is in the yellow. Then the second row cell style will be our header style, which is again in the blue, and then every other row cell style will be data, and that will be all our space data going into our space table. So if I click on OK now, there's my table. Now what I'm going to do, just purely for convenience's sake, I'm going to snap it there to the corner of the viewport like that. Now you'll notice it automatically now asks me for the actual title of the table. Can you see the flashing cursor there? I can put that in. It's kind of easy. It's going to be space table, like so. And then what I can do is I can just click away from the table, and that goes in. So if I zoom in now, you can see the title of that is space table. Now you'll notice there, can you see that's come in as uppercase based on the table style settings. So what we're going to do now is we're going to double click in each header. So if I double click in there now, there's a cursor there. That is going to be my space number, like so. Now I can tab across to the next cell, and that's going to be my space use. So what are we using it for? Office, bathroom, cloakroom. And then last but not least, I'm going to tab across, and this will be my space area. So that will be that X data area from the polyline itself. So if I just click away from the table now, you can see there that I've got all of those set up. And can you see how they've all gone to uppercase based on the table style settings? Kind of neat and tidy, works really well. So if I zoom out a little now, you can just see there nice and neatly that we've got our space table sitting quite nicely to our little FM plan in our space management drawing. We're now in another chapter in our AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course, and we're now going to look at using the space table that we created in the previous chapter. So you'll notice we're in a new drawing, 00 ground FMSP table.dwg, space table, and just a quick sanity check, we go to the Insert tab on the ribbon like usual, into the reference panel, click on the arrow, and you can see there that we've got a referenced in GA drawing that's been renamed as FP. If I hover over it, you can see it's 00 ground GA SP table, and you can find both of those in your lynda.com exercise files to download. You then obviously attach the GA drawing to the FM drawing, rename it as FP, and obviously make sure that you look like that in the external references palette. Home tab on the ribbon, Layers panel, into Layer Properties, and you can see where you've renamed the reference file. It's now FP in your layers there, purely for layer management, and your FM layers all begin with FM, obviously. Now, we're going to be working with the space table again, so the space table layer should really be the current layer. So I'm just going to double click there next to it, like so, just to make sure, and close the Layer Properties Manager. So what we've got to do now is locate the area of each of our named polylines we've got there top left. I'm going to go to the 0, 0 ground layout tab, and there's the space table that we placed previously. I'm going to use a command called zoom window, which is over here on the navigation bar, and I just click on the little fly out there, and I want zoom window, and then I click and go round. Can you see I'm just going around the table there and the top part of the viewport? The reason I'm doing that is so that I can actually get in and actually get access to these polylines. Be careful, because when you want to link the area in the text field here, you've got to click on the edge of the polyline. So just be careful that you can get access to those and your zoom magnification is correct. So let's have a look at setting up one of the space areas that we would set up. So I'm going to go for the bathroom here, which is room 01. Now it's going to be in here, space area 01, and then I'll do the space number and the space use later. Let's do the area first. So I now double click in that cell. Now what I do is I do field, like I did before, like so, and we go to category objects, field name object, and I come in here like this and I just click on select object. Now I can zoom in, nothing to stop me, and I click on the edge of that bathroom like that. No double clicking to activate the viewport, I just click and it tells me it's a polyline. Now we do need to use the additional formatting again, so the conversion factor 0.123450 zeros and then a 1. That makes my 16.3 come up in the preview, and I click on OK, and I click on OK. I can still continue editing that text field like I can in multi-line text. So I'm going to put an M there now, and then I go to my symbol like so, and I select squared like so. I then click away from the text, or I can close the text editor on the ribbon, either will do, and you can see there now when I zoom out that I've got 16.3 meters squared. Now what I can do there is do the rest of those polylines like that if I want to. It's very quick and easy to do. Just double click on the next cell like so, again field like so, field category, again objects, select object in the field name, click on the select object, and you can zoom out again, and the next room will be in here. So there's O2, the office, get an outline there, and again do the additional format where we do the conversion factor 0.123450 zeros and a 1. Remember, no prefix or suffix needed. 27.1, click on OK, and again click on OK, and again we just put M, and then we set up the symbol, our squared symbol, using the multi-line text editor for our table like so. I then click on close and close the text editor, and job done. So that's how we find our space areas, if I just zoom out there a tad, for our table in our layout tab. It's that quick and it's that easy to do. Now you remember in previous chapters we used a little block and an attribute to set up our space numbers, our attribute data for each of our spaces highlighted by the polylines in our AutoCAD FM drawing. Now we're staying in the 00 ground fm_sp table.dwg file like we did in the previous video, and what we're going to do, we're going to edit our space table, but this time we're going to bring in our block data into our space number column, and then we're just going to list the space use as a piece of text, a regular piece of text in the space table. Now I'm going to do a little bit of zooming here, so you might need to just make sure you know where you are in the layout tab. I'm staying in the 00 ground layout tab in the drawing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on the table a bit, and there's our first space number. Now this is going to be room 01, which would have been the bathroom over there in the actual drawing itself. So I'm going to click once now in the field like that. Now you'll notice it changes colour to a different colour, like a sort of almost a pink fleshy colour actually. And I'm going to go to insert here and click on this panel, and I can insert a block from my drawing. Now again, I don't need to activate the viewport. I just click on block like so, and you'll see that I can insert a block into my table cell like this. It's really rather useful. So what I can do is I can click here, and there's my space number block with the attribute and so on. So there's the properties, the scale, the auto fit, overall cell alignment and so on. So if I now just click on OK, what will happen? Well, it will drop it straight into there like so. Now the rotation angle is 0 and the overall cell alignment there is top left. I want it to be middle center. So if I now click on OK there, like so, it'll ask me now for the space number, which in this case will be 01 for my bathroom. When I click on OK, there's my block. How neat is that? I've got a block in exactly the same format as the drawing. So if I just click away or hit escape to deselect that cell, and I pan over here and look there, it looks exactly the same as my 01 there. How neat and cool is that? So I can insert a block into each of these space number cells in the column. Now the space use for that one, I just double click in the cell, that's going to be a bathroom. So that's just a piece of text, and then I click away from the cell or click on Close Text Editor here in the ribbon. Now the next space number again is going to be a block, so I'm going to bring that in, and again insert block like so. Remembers SP number this time. Again, just get the cell alignment to middle center so it looks neat and tidy. Click on OK. Space number will be 02 this time, so I click on OK like so, and it puts that block in. Hit escape to deselect that cell in the table. Zoom out. Zoom in on 02 there. That's going to be used as an office. Zoom out again, over to the table. Space use there. Double click in the cell and just put office. Just type it in. It's just a text field in this case. And we're going to click there and close the text editor. So you can see how quick and easy it is to set this up in a space table. So let's do the whole thing all the way across for that last row in the table. So I'm going to click once here, like so. I'm going to go to Insert and Block. SP number is the block. Make sure you middle center it, like so, and make sure the auto fit is on as well. Click on OK, and the last one will be 03, like so. Click on OK. Hit escape to deselect that cell. Now I'm just going to pan upwards to lose all that gobbledygook on the command line there, and I'm going to double click in the space use because I know that that will be the cloakroom. I remembered that from when we set it up previously, and if I just tab across once now, you can see there now that it's in the next cell ready to go. So I go to field now, and remember we go to objects for the category, object for the field name, click on the select object icon and just pan and zoom. And there's the cloakroom there, 03. Just click on the outline of the polyline. And again, we need to set our additional format. So conversion factors needed, 0.123450 zeros and a 1. And that gives me 9.7 square meters. Click on OK. So that's there. There's the preview. Click on OK again. There's my 9.7 and I want M. And then what I want as well is the symbol. So I'll click on squared like that. Now you will notice that the table has kind of disappeared a little bit. AutoCAD does this sometimes. Don't worry about it. It's kind of catching up a little bit with the data for some reason. So I just click on close, close the text editor. As soon as you close the text editor, it's fine. And as you can see now, we now have all of our space numbers, all of our space use, all of our space areas set up nice and neatly in our space table. Very quick and very easy. We're now in the penultimate chapter of our AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course. And you'll notice we're in a new drawing, which is 00 ground FM exporting.dwg. And you'll see there that we're in the Model tab, and you can see that we've got our background reference file attached like so. You can see it there like so. So let's do that quick sanity check. I'll just hit escape there to deselect the reference file. Insert tab on the ribbon, into the reference panel, click on the arrow. And you'll see there that we've got the FP reference attached, which is the 00 ground GA exporting.dwg file. You can find both of these files in your lynda.com exercise files. Make sure you reference the GA drawing into the FM drawing and then rename it as FP, like so. That then allows you to manage your layers. So if I go to the Home tab, into the Layers panel, into the Layer Properties, because I've renamed my reference file, all of my reference layers, you can see FP there, Facility Plan, are easy to manage in the Layer Properties Manager. So let's have a look at this chapter now. We're going to look at exporting the space table data. So I'm going to go to the 00 ground Layout tab. I'm going to zoom in on my table. That's all I need to see, my table right there. I'm going to select my table, like so. Then if I right click on my table now, you'll notice there's an export option right there. So that's on the shortcut menu, hit export. I can export out straight away to a CSV, a comma delimited file, which means that something like Microsoft Excel can pick that up and then have a look at it and actually work with it. Then it can go to other products such as Microsoft Access and start to be databased and so on. I'm going to overwrite the file that's already there, which is in your drawings folder as well, your lynda.com exercise files, space tables CSV there. Click on save. It'll tell me, do I want to replace it? Yes, I do. And there you go. You've exported out all of that table data straight to a CSV file to be used in Microsoft Excel. In the previous video, we looked at exporting out our space table data to a comma delimited file in the background here. I'll just bring it in now. And there's Excel there, and there's our spacetable.csv file. This is the data that's come out. Now, if you just expand these fields, can you see space table? There's the title of our space table, space number, space use, space area. So I'll just expand these fields by double clicking on the columns, and there's all the information. Can you see block SP number? And obviously it doesn't bring the numbers of the blocks through, it doesn't bring the attributes through, it just brings the block name through in this case. But that can obviously be easily edited later on if need be. And then what I can do, I can click on File here in Excel and do a Save As, and that will then prompt me, where do I want to save this as a CSV space table. I can take it to anywhere I want to. I can take it to my OneDrive, I can take it onto the PC, wherever it needs to go. So I can save that out as an Excel file and work on it accordingly. The best bit about that though is it can also go out to someone who doesn't use CAD. They can then take that data and utilize it for other functions within your organization when you're working out your space data and your space areas in your AutoCAD FM drawings. So now we bring our AutoCAD Facilities Management 102 Space Management course to a close. And during this course you might think now about your next steps and what you might do with facilities management and space management in your AutoCAD drawings. What we've done in the Model tab in the drawing is we've developed our drawing like so. We've brought in our reference file, our GA, which we've renamed as FP, so I'll just hit escape there to deselect it. And then what we've done is we've highlighted our spaces with these polylines, like so, and developed blocks and attributes and text data to actually highlight the actual X data that comes from those polylines. So the X data has given us the area value. We've put some text in to represent the space use. We've put a block and attribute data in to represent the space number. That data has then been put into the Layout tab here, into our space table. So there's our blocks there representing our space numbers. There's our bathroom, office and cloakroom there in the space use, and then our space areas have been linked across in the Layout tab as well to put values into our space table. And then what we've also done is we've exported that space data out to products such as Microsoft Excel as well. So your next steps now are to utilize AutoCAD for your FM drawings. Utilize AutoCAD for your space management within your organization or for a client. And as you can see, the process isn't difficult, it's just a case of applying the tools that you have in AutoCAD to develop effective space management drawings.